Back live tonight here on In Focus. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to concede the 2024 U.S. presidential election to Donald Trump in just under 45 minutes from now. She's already done so over a phone call, but she is expected to address the nation after that projected win. Trump currently holds 291 electoral college votes, while Harris could only manage 223. My colleague Xoli Mngambi has been in Washington, D.C. for several days now, and he is joining me now for one last time as we conclude our reporting there on the ground. Mngambi, good to have you. Thank you very much for coming on. Washington is, of course, for Kamala Harris. She won Washington, but not to mean that she won the rest of the race.
Tabo, you are spot on. Washington is the administrative capital. And, you know, as we talk among ourselves here as journalists who have been reporting over the last few days, one of the views is that Washington is almost a country within a country. I think by that, I mean it's almost a state that lives in a bubble where the establishment, the political establishment, is almost insular to what is happening around the country. And that's how some people are digesting this result, to say it's almost as if the Democratic Party did not read the mood of the country. And this is why some of them are in a state of shock. We have been looking out for anything that could come from the Kamala Harris camp, whether it be the former presidents that have lined up behind her, trying to egg her on during this campaign, but nothing has been forthcoming. So what we are going to see in the next few minutes when she does make her concession speech is her speaking for the first time, because even those that were gathered at Howard University hoping to catch a glimpse of her and hoping that she would say something, even if she had lost. They were told to walk away last night, and we understand that there were tears there, as well as people clearly read the message that she simply did not make it. But there are those, Tabu, who are saying this is actually a new era for America, and that era is going to come with Donald Trump, whether you agree with him or not. For them, this was about bread and butter issues. This was about the security of the country, that they believe under Donald Trump, things are going to change for the better for them.
Is there a conversation around the Democrats on how they need to change their message? I suppose it's that moment to reflect on what actually did not work with that particular message. What is standing out for you in terms of at least people who would have been supporters of Kamala Harris?
Tabo, the sentiment here, and it's quite interesting, because part of the demographic that she would have relied on is the black vote. But the suggestion is that people, especially black Americans, were put off by people like former President Barack Obama, who went and gave a speech and said, you black people support Kamala Harris. I'm paraphrasing him. He may not have put it in these words, but there was utter rejection of that, to say black people are not one-dimensional. And you cannot expect, just because Kamala Harris is black, she is going to be voted for by black people. Yes, indeed, in the states where she was expected to take the black vote, she did take that, but Donald Trump making inroads and therefore reducing whatever the size of the votes, the number of votes that Kamala Harris would have mustered, but that has been reduced because Donald Trump has made inroads not only in the black vote, but in the Latino vote. And that tells you something about perhaps some of the things that went wrong in the Kamala Harris campaign. We can't forget, Tabo, in the last few days, just before Election Day, I'm thinking it was actually 2 days before, on a Sunday, when she addressed in Michigan, I think it was. And there we're told that there is quite a good community of Arab Americans that live there. And so Gaza would have been expected that she speaks about it. And she did invoke the subject of Gaza, saying that when she does come into office, if she does come into office, she will strive to end the war in Gaza. But I guess that message came a little too late, because it's part of what, as I understand it, she has avoided speaking about throughout her election campaign. And you would understand why, Thabo. She has been part of the Biden administration, and a lot of Arab Americans resenting the stance that America has taken, the handling of the Middle East conflict. And now there is this belief, though, even though it is somewhat ironic, there's this belief that Donald Trump is going to end the war in the Middle East. But the question is how, when he and Benjamin Netanyahu are so close. They have a very close relationship, and so it's going to be a very interesting dynamic how Donald Trump ends that war, when in all probability Benjamin Netanyahu may not have the appetite to end the war, because in his words he wants to eliminate the grouping that has been wreaking havoc, according to him, in Israel, and that is Hamas.
Of course, the expectation is that this is going to be a peaceful transition, unlike what would have seen in 2020. January 6th is a moment that comes to mind. The Harris team, I suppose, promising that this will be such a transition.
Well, Thabo, I'm glad you touched on that, because the question of whether or not there was going to be a peaceful transition from one administration to the next, that was a source of worry if Donald Trump had not won the election, because part of what we have seen in this campaign was pressure on him to tell the public whether or not he will concede defeat and accept that he has lost the election. And that is something that he simply could not answer straightforwardly up until the last few days, if you will. And so, talking about that, there has been a lot of security, if you like. The shops in and around Washington, D.C. boarded up. People worried that post-election violence could come about if Donald Trump didn't make it. For example, the residence of the Vice President Kamala Harris were told that a lot of security, also the fencing, had gone up there. And so how the current administration is saying or speaking around that is that, no, this is all in preparation for the inauguration day. But those that are not convinced by that are saying, well, we're reading between the lines, and we think that this was part of the preparation. These were part of the security measures to say people will be safe, or the law enforcement are going to do everything in their power to make sure that people are safe, even if there is disquiet. Should Trump not win, we want to make sure that measures are in place to make sure that America is safe. And so the security element was very much part of the worry by the security establishment in America.
Well, Mngambi, it was going to be an emotional election from the start, but you've had a front row seat to this historic comeback. What stands out for you?
That question, I suppose, I was never going to avoid it. What it is that I've taken away from this experience. First of all, I wouldn't have dreamt, Thabo, that I would be within earshot of the White House. This is the most powerful country in the world, and I think for any journalist, we've been taking pictures from day one that we arrived here. But here's the important bit about what has happened here, and I'm going to try and draw parallels between back home and what has happened here in relation to the election. So, in May 29, I think it's not a far-fetched idea to suggest that we, and when I say we, including us in the media, we would have never predicted that the MK party, as led by former President Jacob Zuma, would have performed in the manner in which it did. And true to form, the ANC has admitted this, that they did lose 50% majority in part because of the arrival of the MK party. And I can remember the last official who said that in the recent past, Gwede Mantashe, the chairperson of the ANC. And so drawing parallels between what has happened here and South Africa is that I suppose we as the media should not underestimate just how much people do not care as to the character of the person that is being voted for, but perhaps the things that they claim to represent. Donald Trump has convinced the people here that he is about the economy, and people are feeling the pinch here, Thabo. The cost of living crisis is indeed what people have been complaining about. The porous borders that we usually complain about in South Africa, that's an issue here. So these are issues that perhaps people, ordinary Americans, have voted along the lines of, and therefore, I don't think that the people, the general public, should be dismissed when they say they don't care about those issues. Perhaps it is what affects them at a personal level that perhaps matters most.
Xoli Mngambi, thank you tonight. I appreciate you live for us there in Washington, D.C. That will be, I suppose, his final crossing with us from that spot. But we are continuing to watch the wires for that concession speech which Kamala Harris will be delivering